Hello, today I am bringing 16 amazing ornament ideas for you all. My name is Yami. I am your Latina next door. Welcome back to mi casa. I have some brand new ornament ideas along with some of my best ever. I hope you enjoy. So for this first ornament, we're going to be using this little pack of craft ornaments. You can find these at Michael's or Hobby Lobby. They come in a little 4-pack, and these were $5, but I got them for 50% off, so they were only $2.50 for 4 of them, making each one about 60 cents. These were little frames, so the first thing I did was remove the inside. And then with my crafting shears, I removed the top portion of the little ornament, just leaving the circle. Then taking some yarn from Dollar Tree, I began to wrap it around the little ornament form. I wrapped it around neatly, and I would add a little dot of hot glue every once in a while to make sure I would secure it down. And then when I was done wrapping it around, I added a little bow to the bottom of it. Then I added a mini pine cone to the center of the bow, and then I would add a little piece of yarn to the back so that I can hang it. And this is complete. So for this next ornament, you're going to need some clear plastic balls that you can get at Dollar Tree. You're going to need some fake snow, some greenery, some jute, pine cones, and some ribbon. The first thing you're going to do is add the snow into the ball. The next thing you're going to do is glue some jute to the very top of the ornament, and you're going to begin to wrap it around, adding a little bit of hot glue as you go. And you're going to want to take this from 1/3 to half of the way down. Next, I cut off all the extra little jute hairs. And then I added my greenery or florals, and I just hot glued it to the very top of the ornament. All you need is a little bit of ribbon to hang, and your ornament is complete. And you can do these in so many different ways. This next ornament, we're going to be using some wooden beads. Now these you can find at your local Michael's, and you can get these on sale. I took some of the smallest beads out of the container, and using the lid from the container, I used that as my template in order to get the size that I needed so I can make a little necklace of wooden beads. Next, I needed to create a round disc that would go inside of my beads, and for this I used my little Olfa circle cutter. I set it to the exact same measurement as the lid, and I used this to cut the foam. Now the little cutter will punch a hole in the center of that circle. That's kind of how it stays in place while it does the cutting. However, I'm going to cut out some words, and I am going to glue them onto the disc so you won't see that little hole. By the way, these little words are in my free printables library on my website, and I will have a link so that you can get access to it in my description box below. Adhering the words is easy. All you have to do is use a glue stick. And then you add some hot glue to the perimeter, add your beads and a bow, and then you're done. So for this next DIY ornament, we're going to be creating some trash to treasure ornaments. Now what you're going to be using is some corks, and the first thing you want to do is you either want to boil them in hot water or you want to steam them like I am so that you can cut them down. After they were nice and steamed, I took a serrated knife and cut them in half. And as you can see, it is so easy to cut them down when they're nice and softened by the steam. Next, I arranged them together to form a little snowflake, and I began to hot glue them together. You can make these any size you want. I did make a larger version and a smaller version. Then I took these little wood cutout snowflakes from Dollar Tree and painted them white. This is optional, but I did add a little bit of school glue and some white glitter. I glued them onto the center of the cork snowflake. I added some ribbon to hang them, and that was it. For this next DIY ornament, you're going to need some clear balls from a Dollar Tree and some decorative ribbon. I have this beautiful embroidered looking ribbon. This is from Hobby Lobby, and you can get these for 50% off whenever they go on sale. And you're just basically going to hot glue this onto the ornament on the outside. And what I did was, to start my first line, I decided to use the seam on the actual ornament, and I followed that line, and it was just a perfect guide to go all the way around the ornament. And I repeated this several times. I'm going for a more neutral tone on this ornament, but you can definitely add color to it or even beading if you wish. Next, all you have to do is add the top to the ornament and then some ribbon to hang, and that is it for this DIY ornament. For this next ornament, you're going to need some foam balls. You're also going to need some jute and some of these berries that come from the floral berries that you get at Dollar Tree. First thing you're going to do is remove the berries one by one. Just be careful not to remove too much of the red. Next, you're going to take a little piece of jute and you're going to hot glue it onto the styrofoam ball. Next, using some tweezers if you need to, grab the little balls and begin to hot glue them all over the styrofoam ball. If you have any exposed white pieces of your berries, try to face them downwards, but no worries. If you have any little pieces like mine, the simple fix is just going in with some red paint and touching up those areas. Next, I used some glossy Mod Podge to seal all the berries. And then I added a little neutral bow to the top. For this next DIY ornament, we're going to be using these little ornaments that you can buy at Dollar Tree. And you don't always have to purchase new. You can use any of them that you have on hand that you no longer use or want to change up. Just make sure that they're the plastic non-breakable kind. I cut some strips of white fabric, and what I did was I wrapped them around each of the ornaments. I kind of created like a little star form. This way I can just put the ornament in the center and begin to hot glue the pieces of fabric up its sides, as you see right here. Now eventually this little guy will look like Wilson from Castaway, but no fears. We're going to take a little bit of jute string and we're going to tie the very top part and leave kind of like the fabric to just bunch up like this at the very top, kind of like it's in a little bag of sorts. After this, you can add bows, you can add berries, you can add greenery, you can customize these any way you want. This is definitely a really good way to get rid of some of your scrap fabric.
Coming to visit. No, he wouldn't miss this in Christmas times. Oh, and the sunset, it is just getting better on a blanket with the skyline painted in blue. Ooh.
And these ornaments definitely coordinate with the previous berry ornaments that I shared. So for this next ornament, we are going to be using this little wooden disc. You can get these at the wood section of either Michael's or Hobby Lobby, and they come several to a pack. Now I'm just using some wood tint that I had on hand to give these a nice stain. After it was dry, I did sand it a little bit to distress it, but it's completely optional. Now, I'm taking a Sharpie as you see here, and I began to add some dots to form the shape of a Christmas tree. And I just basically started white at the bottom and began going up, getting a little bit more smaller and smaller as the tree progressed. Next, taking my drill with the really tiny drill bit, I began to drill holes in each of those little dots that I created with my Sharpie. After I was done drilling, I did wipe everything off and sanded it a little bit to make sure I got rid of any splinters. Then, using the same yarn that I used in my previous ornament, that very first one I shared with you guys, I began to stick it through these holes using an embroidery needle. And then I just worked my way up that pattern, following those little holes, working in kind of like a crisscross shoelace pattern. Once I got to the top, I just tied a knot in the back so that it would not get undone. I wanted to add a cute little star to the top of the Christmas tree, and I had these glitter foam stars that I've had a while in my craft stash, so I decided to remove one and hot glue it to the top of the tree. Now, if you like the previous DIY but don't have a drill or don't want to use a drill, this is basically the same concept, only using an embroidery hoop. Get yourself some fabric of your choice. Some scrap fabric works just fine. This is exactly what I'm using, and add it to your embroidery hoop. And using that same yarn from Dollar Tree, I'm just going to embroider freehand, by the way, the little Christmas tree onto this hoop. And this does not need to look perfect. As a matter of fact, if it looks a little bit rustic, it'll give it a little bit extra charm. And you're just gonna start at a dot and start creating longer little lines as you see here, so that you start on the trunk. And then once you're done with the trunk, you're gonna do the wider bottom part of the Christmas tree. And anyone can do this. You do not need to know how to embroider. I do not know how to embroider, and I was still able to create this cute little ornament.
We're gonna dance, 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 come on, dance. We're gonna dance, dance, have a good.
And what I like to do is I like to keep going in with the Christmas tree, making the lines smaller, but then every other one I would go back out again, and then I would come back in, and then I would come back out again, and then come back in. I hope that makes sense.
All the windows in the rain is pouring. It will always be Christmas in my heart. But this year I wanna hang out with my friends.
Then when I was done with the Christmas tree, I took some white yarn that I had on hand, and I made a little star for the top.
Ocean. Let's go to the ocean. Yeah, let's go.
Then I trimmed off the excess fabric. Then to finish the back, I trace out the inside circle of an embroidery hoop, and then I cut that down on some foam board.
In Christmas time.
I tuck the fabric in on the back side, and then I push that foam board down, and then it holds the fabric in place. Now you don't have to just do this with plain fabric. You can also do this on striped or pattern fabric, and it turns out really darling as well. And you don't always have to sew the topper on it. You can get some foam stickers or some other kind of beads and adhere it onto the top of your Christmas tree. And then just add a bow to the top of the embroidery hoop, and you're ready to hang.
Miss it. No, he wouldn't miss this in Christmas times. Oh, and the sunset, it is just getting better on a blanket with the skyline painted in blue. Ooh, yeah, that's what we do. We'll be chilling and having a good.
Now for this DIY, we're going to be using some more of these clear ornaments from Dollar Tree and some ribbon. I'm using this little gingham red ribbon from Dollar Tree as well, but as always, you can modify this to suit your decor. Using that seam line, we're going to glue this ribbon right on to the ornament. This is kind of the same concept as the previous one that I did with that really pretty embroidered looking ribbon, only we're using regular ribbon, and this has a little bit more of that farmhouse feel.
Come on. We're gonna dance, dance, have a good time, dance.
We're going to use 2 ribbons, and we're going to cross them to create 4 stripes. And once we're done adhering these, we're going to add some snowball filler to the inside. We're going to reattach the top, and then we're going to add a little bit of greenery and some berries as well. Now this part's optional, but before I did that, I did add some jute to the top of the ornament. And this is actually really cute on its own, but I did go ahead and add some berries and some greenery.
I can see them now. It's like they spell your name.
And that's it for this one, and honestly there's so many variations that you can do with this, giving you lots of possibilities.
Holidays and cheer. But now I got my eye set on you. Oh, I'm not gonna play it safe. I'm not gonna play it safe. It's going down on Christmas Day.
And for this next DIY ornament, we're going to be using these little glass bottles from Dollar Tree. This was one of my 12 days of Christmas crafts from last year, and they turned out really cute. The first thing I'm going to do is going to remove those seashells because we are not going to be using those for this. We are going to be using some of Dollar Tree's miniature village accessories, and I'm just using this little light post and a Christmas tree for this one. I did need to remove the snow from both of them because if I would have kept the snow, they wouldn't have fit through the opening of the little glass bottle. And then I cut down the little post and brick wall to make it a little bit smaller. Again, just so it could fit inside the little glass bottle. and I simply just glued those back together. And then with a little clothespin, I began to insert the little pieces into the glass bottle. I used a little bit of hot glue on the little miniature pieces so that they would stay put once I inserted them. And next I added some fake snow. Next I put the cork back in, added a bow, and then using this little hook from a picture hanging kit that I had on hand, I screwed it to the top of the cork, added some ribbon through it, and this was complete.
But now I got it planned, I know just what to do. I'm trying to tell you in every way, yeah, I'm trying to show you, but somehow feel I wanna have someone to hold, walking through the falling snow. I'm trying to tell you.
For this next DIY ornament, we're going to be using these unfinished wood ornaments that you can find at your local Michael's. They come in lots of different shapes, and for this one I did go ahead and stain it. However, I don't have the footage for that, but I do have this picture, so there you go. I stain these in a nice rich dark brown stain, and afterwards, after they were dry, I took some black chalk paint and began to paint the inside, mimicking the outer edges of the actual ornament itself. After the paint was dry, I took a paint marker and hand wrote words onto them. Of course, for the round ones, I did the same thing, only I used white paint and black paint marker, and I wrote words on this as well. Now for this next project, we're going to be creating something with ornaments, not just creating an ornament. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using these Dollar Tree ornaments as well as this vase filler. I've had this on hand. You can get this at Hobby Lobby and they're very inexpensive, especially when they're on sale. You're going to want to remove all of the tops of all of the ornaments that you're going to be using, and with a knife or a wood burning kit like I'm using, you're going to want to remove those little pieces from the top, making it nice and smooth. Then you're going to want to cut a hole into the other side opposite of that hole with your wood burning kit as well. And next, you're going to take that foam wood filler and you're going to begin to string it onto some baker's twine. And I like using an embroidery hoop for this. You're just going to put it through the holes and create a pattern. Whether it's a color pattern, size pattern, that one's totally up to you. But you're just going to keep stringing them along so that you can create a beautiful garland out of your ornaments. You're going to continue until you have your desired length, and that is it for this one. Now on that same token, you can use that same wood filler or any other kind of foam ball wood filler and create a garland pattern with it, and then you can just add a little snowflake ornaments throughout, staggering them or separating them out as often as you want them on your garland, and that's pretty much all you have to do for that as well. Alright, so back to ornaments. I am going to be creating some ornaments out of some popsicle sticks, and I am using my mini miter saw kit for this. I am just cutting the ends of these out so I can create a nice square. I'm going to take a scrap piece of popsicle and I'm going to use that in order to hold all of my pieces together. Next, I'm going to get some white chalk paint and give it a coat. After that's dry, I am going to take some mini square dowels, cut them down to create a frame. And then with this little pattern, I am going to draw on a little deer head. And then with a Sharpie paint marker, I am just going to fill in that little deer head. I am going to add the dowels, which I stained as well. And then I'm going to add a little ribbon on the back so that I can hang it. I'm going to add a little bit of cardstock to finish off the back. And then I added a little red berry for Rudolph's nose. Of course, I do have several options that you can create, and I do have an original video if you guys want to check that out. I'll have it listed below. The printables for the Mary ornament is also located in my free printables library on my website, and that little pattern that I created for you all is also available for you to use and trace. For this next one, we're going to start with a toilet paper roll. Yes, you heard that correctly. And you're going to want to cut some rings down to about 3/4 inch widths. Next, I took some yarn that I had on hand and I cut pieces down to 13-inch lengths. Next, I would bend the yarn in half, and then I would create that loop in the end, and I would bring the two ends in and I would pull. And you want to continue this all the way around until you've covered the entire toilet paper roll. These are going to be so cute. I have seen these done all over Pinterest with so many different ways of doing them, and I thought I'd share here. Next, once you're done, you're going to want to push all of those ends of the yarn in and kind of invert it. And once they're all the way through, you want to stick a couple of cotton balls inside. Then you're going to set it right side up, and you're going to take some other piece of yarn and you are going to tie that top part.
We can hang out on the beach without freezing.
And then you're going to cut off the excess of the yarn. And then I'm sure you're starting to see the shape of a cute little toboggan hat.
Having a good time. Doesn't matter if the snow.
You're just going to want to keep trimming until you're happy with how it looks. Just making sure the little cotton balls don't fall out. You can always adjust those and adhere them with some hot glue. And I did make this in white as well.
Making angels in the sand, you and me. Doesn't matter, it is Christmas in my heart. And I can promise Santa's coming to visit. No, he wouldn't miss this in Christmas times.
And for this final DIY, we're going to be creating this cute little DIY Christmas tree ornament. And the first thing you need is some cardstock. You're just going to cut it in half.
Yeah, that's what we do.
And you're going to roll it onto itself just so that you can make a cone.
Good time.
I went ahead and used a little bit of hot glue to adhere it together so that it wouldn't come apart. And then I began to cut it down a little bit smaller. I cut tabs all the way around the bottom perimeter so that I can bend the tabs in.
Friends and family, making angels in the sand, you and me. Doesn't matter.
Then I traced the bottom of the cone out on a little bit of scrap cardstock and cut that piece out so I can glue it on the bottom of the cone. Now it doesn't have to be perfect because I will be covering this up with some yarn. Next, I hot glued the very top tip of the tree and I added some yarn and I began working my way down, making sure everything was nice and tight, and I would add some hot glue dots as I came down just to keep it in place. I wrapped the yarn around to the bottom of the little Christmas tree to make sure I covered any imperfections, and then I took a small wooden bead and glued it to the bottom. Then I took a cute little foam sticker star and adhered it to the very top of the tree. I added a little bit more of the twine so that I can hang it, and this ornament was complete.
We can hang out on the beach without freezing. Yeah, isn't that amazing? In Christmas times, we'll be chilling and having.
Well, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to hit like and let me know in the comments below which one of these was your favorite. I hope you got a lot of great ideas, and I will see you guys in the next home decor and DIY video. Until then, adios!